In this video, we are taking an initial look at business models, the features of a business model, and which will be expanded in follow-on videos. Now, a business model as such is in your book defined as, a description of how the business works, description of how a business functions, how it works, and it is broadly accepted that elements of this definition should include the answers to a couple of questions, namely how. I'll write them down and then we'll expand on each one. What, plus often why. The next one is where. Then we've got how much, which of course is all about the pricing. And finally, how. Sorry, the first one is not how. The first one is who. My mistake, apologies there. Who. Now, who is all about answering the question or telling us who the customer base is. The next one, what, and often why, that's all about the product or service being offered. What it is, but also why we as consumers, as customers need it. Where, that's about the channels via which the product is being sold or the service is being sold. How much is, of course, pricing strategy. And we will have a separate video, in fact, the next one on this. And we'll also have separate videos on how, or a separate video on this, because this is about the key assets, partners, suppliers, how the organization is set up sort of to deliver that business model. Okay, so just a few additional points on these different items. I'm not going to say much about pricing strategy and those key assets or organizational capabilities, because subsequent videos will explore this in more detail. But those first, at least, 3 questions and maybe a little bit on how much as well. Right, the first one was who. So that was all about defining the customers and I guess also the market. Are we targeting specific customers? Or maybe specific segments, types of customer. Is this supposed to be business to business or business to customer selling? Are we interested in specific geographies and only focusing on these or not? I mean, there are so many different ways to approach this, and especially the first topic, customer segmentation by demographic, by geography, by customer behavior, etc. So very very important point, that first one, who. Then the next one was, let's have a look, what and often why, plus often why. Sometimes you need to explain to the client, to convince the client of the need of a product. So this is about the product stroke or slash service offering, and you need to define the product or service. And very importantly also, how it is different from the offering of the competition, from competitors' offerings. But also think about what the needs of the customer are, right, and how that product or service fits those or suits those needs or addresses them. Now, where is the next question, or was the next question? I said this is about the channels, and we'll have, if your book, says a little bit more about this. So where is the offering sold? Such as, online, in physical stores, but also how are customers being reached in terms of learning about your product. So this has, I guess, more than one sort of dimension. On the one hand, it's sales and marketing. That's reaching the client, but then also distribution in terms of how customers can buy the thing, and all the logistics associated with that. And your book also talks about there being sort of two approaches to a channel strategy. Channel being the synonym of that question, where on the one hand the traditional model or the traditional channel strategy would be to go from a manufacturer, in the case of goods, manufacturer, via a wholesaler who buys in bulk, then somebody who is a retailer, like a shop somewhere on the high street, and it's there where the stuff reaches the end customer, and which is of course how a lot of food is sold, especially sort of commodity foodstuffs. Now, the alternative to this would be to have a direct sales strategy, where we go directly from manufacturer to end customer, without all of those interim steps. And traditionally, the direct sales approach, let me write this down as well. Traditionally, this approach was used or has been used for, especially for relatively complex, high margin products. Stroke services that you would need to buy directly from the supplier. A good example of this would be, for example, industrial equipment, which you wouldn't buy in a high street shop or at a wholesaler, but rather from the manufacturer. Same with medical equipment. Especially in the world of business to business, B2B, if your customer base is relatively small or narrow, no need to put your goods into a wholesaler, retailer. Just target them directly, which is what a lot of manufacturers do. These days, direct sales are also used, not necessarily in the world of B2B or for very complex products. They're also being used by brands that target individual clients. Think about Apple phones, typically, or Apple, not just phones, electronic products, often sold via Apple stores on the high street. Similar thing with a lot of fashion brands who want to have their own their equipment sold directly, because the big advantage here is you have a much closer relationship with the customer. And if you're selling something this doesn't mean that you can't have a dedicated retail outlet. You can, but it's going to be under your own brand. So your products definitely are not shown alongside the products of your competition. Not shown alongside those of competitors. The minus is, or the negative here is, the downside is that you incur significant costs. associated with keeping that direct sales channel going, especially the cost of fixed salaries, benefits, employment benefits for the people performing the selling. Here, the selling is sort of outsourced to retailers and wholesalers. You just need to worry about the marketing and keeping your customers aware of the features of your product. But with direct sales, you also have to have your own sales staff on the payroll. Okay. Right, let me just mention one more thing here, something called omni-channel. This is where numerous channels are used at the same time, so this should read omni-channel, and in today's day and age it's primarily about mixing or combining digital and physical channels. Digital meaning, for example, buying via through an online shop. Physical channel means having your stores, and both are complementary for sale completion. Think about brands where you can order something online, buy something online, and you can have it delivered to a store, a physical store, where you can pick the thing up, or go to the store and buy it there outright if it's available on hand. Clothing, a lot of electronics can be bought this way and is indeed sold this way. Now, the next of our questions here, so we've got where, was how much. So that was about the pricing strategy. So I'll just say a few very, very brief words here. How much, or the question of pricing. Of course, what pricing strategy one follows very much depends on what the product is, if and whether we as a company have any pricing power. If you are one of those so-called commodity producers, so you operate in a market where there are many producers of the same thing, and there is very little or indeed no product differentiation possible, then you are simply a price taker. You can't really influence the price in the market. You just take the price that is in the market, and that is the case with things like oil, gas, of course, typical commodities, agricultural commodity as well. But this is not just about commodity products. Pharmaceuticals that are no longer patented or subject to patent protection, so non-patent pharmaceuticals are also commodity products, and their producers are commodity producers who just have to follow the market price or take the market price. On the other hand, if there are few competitors producing the same thing, or this is coupled with, or maybe there is the possibility to differentiate the product, so product differentiation, then that's another completely different thing, because you will have pricing power to some degree. And in the next video we'll be discussing pricing strategies. And just the final point I want to mention, I want to say here, is the concept of the value proposition. The value proposition is, or are, the product stroke slash service attributes, so the features of the product or service that are valued by the customer. And what's valued by the customer will be based on all the sort of questions we've been asking thus far, like who the customer is, what the product is or service, how it is being sold, how much, what the pricing of that product is. So, there are products that are very, very tailored to the needs of specific clients, and those clients will perhaps value that aspect of it, right? Some of them will value the features of the product or the service. Some of them will value the ease with which they can purchase stuff online or order things in a seamless way, in a very sort of effortless way. Or for others, it's all about the visit to the physical shop, which they enjoy. And others will appreciate the fact that something's quite cheap relative to a different product. So different elements may indeed go into that value proposition and be valued differently by clients.